Okay, so hi folks. Today we are going to have our second session for the Manila collab reviews. We will continue to focus on reviewing the multiple subnet support for Manila. So today the focus will be continuing the reviews of the core part of the new feature. All changes. We still need to cover a few parts like the scheduler and also the share manager part before moving to the drivers. Felipe will finish the presentation of the core part. Then we are going to move to Fernando B to show you the changes in the OnTap driver to cover to implement the new feature, and also Eduardo will cover the code for the container driver as well. So yeah, so that pretty much it. If you can, please, folks, if you can add your names to the attendees list, that would be awesome. And I guess we can start. Felipe, I will stop sharing my screen. You can share your screen, continue, okay?
Nice.
Thank you.
So hi folks. So as Fernand said, this session I will start showing the manager and the scheduler from the base batch. I start showing my screen here. I try to be as fast as I can because in this part specifically, it's a bit more complicated and I don't want to take too much time because I still have to show the driver's implementation. So I will start from the scheduler. I think it's just have just small changes here. In the scheduler, what I changed it was the the filter, the available zone filter. I changed this filter. Why I changed this one is because when you create a share that requires share network, and this share network has some availability zone with multiple subnets, I don't want a backend selected that doesn't support the multiple subnet. So if the AZ has multiple subnets, if the share network in this AZ has multiple subnet, I just want to select a backend that support this configuration. Otherwise, we will reach a scenario where the scheduler selects a backend that cannot create this share, that cannot set up the server with this configuration. So what I did was I'm passing in the requests and the request spec this new information, AZ request multiple subnet support map. It's a map that contains the AZ and if it supports or if it requires or not the multiple subnet support. So I fill this in the API layer, this map, and then here in this filter, I get this map and I check if the host supports multiple subnet support. So share server multiple subnet support is a capability that informs if the backend supports or not this configuration. And then I have this, it's a bit trick here, it's code. So if the host satisfies the AZ, so it means that it worked before. So it passes on these filters here. If it doesn't, we don't need to check this because the host doesn't support anymore. So we don't need to check the multiple subnet support. If it's host satisfies, and if there is a map set to avoid some errors, like when it's not passing, and host single subnet only, it means that this here is not is true. So the host doesn't support multiple subnet. Because if it supports multiple, I don't need to check. I don't need to check if this AZ is multiple or not. If it supports multiple, if it's multiple, it will be true. If it's not multiple, it will be true as well. So I'm just checking when the host doesn't support multiple subnet. And here, okay, if the host doesn't support multiple subnet, I will check if in this AZ, the share network requires a multiple subnet. So I collect the host AZ ID and see if it's false. If it's false, it means that it's not requesting multiple subnet, so the host keeping satisfying. If it's true, so it means that the host, in this AZ, it's requested a multiple subnet support. It will be false because as we see here, this host doesn't support multiple. So in the end, we will filter only backends that support the request, and we will avoid error on the manager side. So this filter does basically this. There's a code that's a bit trick here, and it does this. Here I'm just setting the things, new capabilities that I have here. Network allocation update support, share server multiple subnet support. This one is for the update feature, and this one is for setting share server with multiple subnets. And yeah, I'm just setting this through the scheduler. And I think that's it. Do you have any questions regarding this filter or something in the scheduler? Nope. Okay, so I will move. The scheduler is just this. I go to the manager part. So in the manager, so okay, let's see here. Share manager. Okay. So before going to the manager, I think we forgot the share API. We didn't pass in last call in the share API file.
Yeah, that's true.
And let's see here, share API here. So this one, when it's okay for setuping, it's no problem. Here is when you're setting a share server with multiple. Here we were more worried about with the updating allocations. So when you update allocations, I'm going direct to the code. Here, when you're updating, we call this new method, update share server network allocation. And this method, you do some checks. So you check if the share network is active. You check that for all share servers in this AZ, they are in active mode. You check also that you validate the service host. So you check that they are up, the hosts are up. Also, you check the shares to see if they are all available, of unavailable state. And the rules as well, if they are all unavailable state. And if the share is not busy, it means it's not in a task state with like migrating something. So it will check also that the share is not busy. And since all checks pass, it will call, this is important part, we will call before triggering the actual update, we'll call the drivers, we call the backend to check the update, to inform if this update is valid or not for this driver. So we call our RPC for check update share server network allocations, passing the backend host. Okay, it's for the RPC, and the share network ID and the subnet info. The subnet info will contain the availability zone, the neutral net, and the neutral subnet. And in the manager, it will answer with false or true. If it's true, it means that it's compatible. it accepts this update. False, it doesn't. If any of this driver reports that doesn't accept, it means that we cannot perform this update. So you fail. If at least one is false, we raise an exception, means that this request is not accepted. Here, as you see, we block, if you like, if this network is over like 3 backends running different hosts, we run a block RPC for each one. So we send RPC for one, wait the results, check the results, send for the other, wait, check the result, and the last one. If all of them accept this request, we keep going. So when the user run like create operation, create subnet operation in the API, if one of the drivers doesn't accept, it will receive this information instantaneously. It means it will not waiting the operation. If the operation returns for the user with success, it means that the update was triggered, because the check is done during the create operation. So the check is done here, blocking the operation. It's a bit different the way that security service update was designed, and we can discuss later if it's good or not, the benefits and the disadvantages of using this.
Can we get to that now, if you don't mind, because I
Yeah,
want to
we
understand
can.
why. Yep. Just want to know why, why this was different in the sense there was like a lot of back and forth with the security service update stuff. And it was because of, you might have the API services running somewhere and the share manager service running somewhere else, and you have the kind of latency between these services. So making these kind of calls, this would be an RPC call, I presume. I haven't looked at the file yet. So you would be looking at a specific share manager service responding to you, and you're bound to like an RPC timeout as well as an API timeout on this end. And potentially this won't scale, right? Like where if you're talking about 1 or 2 hosts, maybe you're fine, and those timeouts line up. But if you're talking about more than that and adding up the latencies, you're not. I mean, you're going to hit an API timeout even before anything.
Yeah.
Which
Ooh.
might, I don't know if you've made any state changes before this. Probably not, but technically you're gonna, it's gonna be a hit or a miss at those times.
Yeah, we discuss about this issue. We prefer doing in the simplest way, right? Doing this. So then we go here and we can discuss together if it's the best option or not. If we decide that's not the best option, we can change this. So we did this in this way because 2 reasons. One, we want to do this simplest way, and the second one, we don't want to add a new check, not a new check API request. So if we do the way that security serves, we need a check command, right? So you run first a check command, and this check command returns, and then you need to check the check because it will trigger for all backends, right? So it's like a sync call. So you start checking. So to avoid this, to develop this, and to avoid the admin to run check before run the actual create operation, and this check is different. It's a bit different from the security service, because the security service, there's some scenarios that it cannot accept. It's more common. They use the check. The check is more complex than this check that we see. This check is very simple. It's very straightforward. So we thought that there's no problem to block this for some calls, like because this check will not take. The idea is that this check will not be that much complex. So we prefer doing the simplest. But we agree that it can have some problems, like you said, when it grows, and like there are some timeouts in the API, because it's the API is waiting for all answers, so it's waiting for the all RPCs, right? And this can end up in a timeout if it grows too much. So yeah, but if we all agree, we can like create a new CLI with check and do exactly the same way we did with the security service update. I don't see problem to change this. We just did for simplest.
What are the checks that are happening? That would be, I'm trying to look at the code right now, but what is it that the managers have to do and
With
report
check,
back?
okay, we can see here what check does. Yep, sorry, I opened the sure. On the driver side, I know that like Fernando and Eduardo, they developed the container NetApp. In the drive side, it does almost nothing, right? It's just in the container to return is always true, right, Eduardo? And in the
That's
NetApp,
right.
it just check that all VLANs are equal. In this, the all subnets are in the same VLANs, right, Fernando?
Yeah. I believe the original idea of this checking was to like make sure that the proposed configuration, or the configuration that was that we planned, that was issue to be added to like to a system, is it's really supported. So for example, for our driver, we have at least for this version, we are not going to support multiple subnets in different network segments. So network segmentation ID must always be the same. So what we basically does on our driver side is validate if if all the new allocations and are in the same segmentation ID. So this is basically because of like some IP space conditions that we don't have to change. We don't have to change how customers already expected to have our driver creating IP spaces in the ONTAP side, but it's totally ONTAP specific. But the idea was to like validate the configuration and check if like it makes sense to the uh, um, makes sense to start the operation. Like at least for the OnTap driver, we're not going to like run commands or wait for something. It's just would be something straightforward, like a few milliseconds operation. But yeah, but I think like Gotham's concern is like it's totally valid. Uh, we just need to understand in case of like a usability. I think like maybe the original concern was a bit also on usability. We would like to have customers to start triggering create subnets and have this and have this operations being triggered directly, instead to like a need to check create. That's more like uh, not exhausting, but it's like it's less a little bit more difficult to use. So considering this should be a simple checking, like that was what was we we thought at the time. But yeah, but
Yeah, the only problem that I see is that if one of the RPCs timeouts, we can end up timeout the entire call,
yeah,
right? Because one of the RPC, like, of course, we check the services up, right? But after we check that the host could end up in a down state, and we are sending RPC and it's waiting because it's block RPC, right? And we are waiting and it's end up timing out the weight and the entire API. The user weight this call too much on the client side, right? So the user send the create operation and start its long time to answer the user. So I see some problems on this approach. Yeah, but as I said, we did this for simplicity. We want to do this as simple as we can, but we are good if you want to change. But let me show the check manager. So in the check, what the manager does is it collects some information from the DB. So like the share network, the AZ subnet, so the subnets in this AZ, right? It's fallback default false. It means that if there is no, it won't return the default subnets. And it's also goes to the network API and includes network info. It means that during this call, I add this new call, include network info. What it does, it gets this dictionary and includes the IP version and something like that, right? Everything related to this subnet. Because it's just a dictionary. We don't have this subnet in the database, so we cannot retrieve this from the database. We are trying to add a new one, but we just want to create this new subnet when all check pass. So in this point here, we don't have this new subnet in the database yet. We just create after all drivers agree on this creation, right? So I add this net info, and then I get the share servers and pass through all share servers and get the new network allocations, collect the share instance rules, and pass this down to the driver. The share server that I want to add this subnet, the current network allocations, the added subnet, which contains also the information for this subnet, not only the neutral net ID, neutral subnet ID, it contains the actual network information, and the share network and security service. Yeah, I'm accessing the security in the security service. Share instance and share instance rules. So the driver will answer if this check is accepted or not. If so, it goes to the next. Otherwise, we return false. It means that at least one share server cannot accept this update allocation, we return false. And on the driver side, as Fernando said, just check the VLAN for NetApp, and for container, it always return true. It will always accept this, this update.
Yeah, but like due to any latency, if we have many RPC calls, like many backends running, we might have we could consume most of the RPC time working with the checks, like doing the checks, and the update part that might consume some time. We'll have less time to execute. Maybe I'm not sure if that's a concern, but yeah.
What do you think, guys?
Well, I mean, there are other patterns for this. I mean, so if you have a driver that's trying to do a particular kind of validation, you could just pump that information down into the scheduler. We do that with the goodness, and the filter functions and the goodness where thingy, where you can pass an arbitrary dictionary, and the scheduler will do that, do whatever is required, right? Match it with something else. So if you, in theory, if you wanted, you could say VLANs must be the same, or segmentation ID should be the same, and that's something you pass along with the scheduler information, so that we look at all the hosts and pull that information from the network,
nice.
and just and pre-match it. That way we don't ever make a call to the driver. We just have that information already. And I mean, for you guys, it's segmentation ID. For somebody else, it could be something else altogether. So that's one approach, maybe, that you can do. Of course, you still don't have the network information. You'd have to find a way to call the network API to grab the network information from the API service. That's another thing to cross. But you at least are you're not reaching out to the share manager. That's one thing. The other way is, I guess, to take this functionality completely off and let your the user have a separate functionality to do a check. I'm not saying tie it up with share security service updates. In security service updates, we kind of put every resource on the line, right? And I don't mind you tying it up with the security service with the updates, just like security service, because then at least you have a consistent user experience. But it's like, even if you provided a check saying, hey, is this going to work or not, it's still a valuable thing to the user. They'd first try that and then do this in case they want to end up in a bad situation.
Okay, yeah. I would say that considering the time we have, maybe the second option would be easier in the sense that we basically need to see how it was done in the security services. We kind of already took a look on that. So, and we could just create the same behavior for this functionality as well. I would say that I don't know why Felipe agrees, but probably the second option, creating the check as a API call, would be the easiest approach for us right now.
Particularly, I didn't understand the first one. You mentioned the scheduler, right?
Yeah. So you let your backends tell you exactly what they want, and take a look at the what is it called? I think the driver function. I forget it. I think it's either the filter function or the goodness function.
Yeah,
I think
would be
it's the
something like a
function.
filter function, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it would be possible to define expression, right? And the expression would be executed in the scheduler instead of the
API. Yeah, but we have that information at all times from the shared drivers.
Yeah, but we don't pass through the scheduler during the update.
Yes, that's what I mean. So you have the information cached. So the API always has that information. We cache the pools data that we have. So you can always look at the pools object and grab the information.
I got it. Yeah, but I still agree with Fernando. I think the check would be easier for us, like adding the check command, and we can reuse some codes from the security service. And as Gotham said, we have a consistent user experience.
Yeah,
because both operations are doing almost not the same, but they're doing the same kind of stuff. They are like updating resources in the network, right? So the security service is updating the security service, and here we are adding subnets, but both of them are changing the subnet. So I changed the networking. So I think we can follow the same pattern.
Yeah, it might not be too complicated because when we designed the shared servers, the security service check, we implemented like the database migration in a generic way. So other operations in the future, which is might be the case for this one, we'll be able to use the tables as well in the structure we have already created. So that might save a lot of time for you.
Thank you. Thank you guys that did in this way. Yeah, I saw the code, and yeah, we can reuse the table and everything. You create the async data table, right? So we can do almost doing the same.
Yeah, I think like you have two scenarios here just to consider. Like you have one scenario where you are going to create a subnet, but you still don't have any share server created. In this case, a check wouldn't be needed, right? So maybe you could like validate that and just go through to like you won't only would to ask for the check command or like a check if like the operation was the check operation was called if there are shared servers already created for that share
I
network,
think
right?
this would be like transparent for the user, because when you are like doing the setup, the operation that you do is you create a share, and the share triggers a setup of share server. And the other is when you create a subnet. But if you create a subnet in a AZ that already has some share servers, you need to run a check before doing this. So yeah, we can do this in the API. We check in the API that, okay, this subnet has, this AZ has some share servers, so please run a check before running the create operation. And that's all. I think we can do this way.
Okay, yeah, so I think so. We have consensus here, right? Like implementing the check API is the way to go.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. So
yep.
Thank you. We can do this later. We add this to the notes, and then we work on this later. Okay, moving on. So doing this check, after we do this check, what I actually do, I will change the resource, the share network for network change status, the share servers to server network change status. So it means that we start the update process. And here I create the new subnet. So after the checks, everything, now I create the new subnet on the database, and I go through all backends and trigger the actual update. So here it will start the update. To start the update share server network allocation, passing the share network and the new share network subnet. And it logs that the update have been started. And that's it from the share API. We don't have much time, so I won't pass through this code here. It's more related to the share, to the scheduler. I'm adding something to the map, so you can check this later. Because we have a lot of code to pass. And okay, so now we can go to the manager. Open manager. Okay, I bumped the version. I changed some access.
I'm not
like
seeing your
here,
screen yet,
subnets.
Felipe. I don't know, like if it's a problem with my internet. Are you folks seeing
Yeah,
his screen?
the screen is frozen here.
Felipe, yeah, try to like just stop sharing and share it again.
Sorry, guys, my internet is pretty unstable right now.
No problem.
Where did I stop?
You were about to start looking at manager's code, right?
Okay, so in the manager, I bumped the RPC version. Like now we're accessing the multiple subnets, not only one. And here I think we had the important thing that I want you guys to give your opinion. We use the share network subnet ID as synchronized parameter. So share net manager, share subnet ID, to ensure that it will be synchronous, this call. What I did here is to collect the first one. We can have like many subnets, right? And I get the first one and use as unique name here, share manager underscore share network subnet ID. I think it won't impact. It won't break this synchronous code here, but you can give your opinion. Another important thing, as you can see here, when you create the share server, we need to, in the database, add the map. And remember, if you remember in the last call, I said that we create a map table, and we need to fill the map table. We need to create the share in the share server table and create the row in the map table. We don't need to do this if we just add here this. We just add the network, we just add share network subnets and pass a list here. But if I add the map table with a string instead of an integer, we cannot do this. It won't work. Remember this discussion, Gotham?
I don't actually. I'm trying to remember.
Okay, I can remember. I can say what it is.
Yeah.
We in the mapping table, I create the ID as an integer, not as a string. So
I see. Okay. So you have
one of the biggest reason that I select use an integer instead of a string is because of this. When you have an integer, the database knows that is a primary key, and it will automatically increment this for you. So it starts with 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, it's not a UID. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so when I create the server, I just pass the list of subnets, and this automatically will fill the map table for us. It will create the server and fill the map table. And I saw that we do this. I saw other projects as well. And we normally use like mapping table with ID.
Yeah.
For this simplicity.
And I was doing some more digging. I didn't actually comment on your patch after that. Yeah. So I'm fine with this. You don't need to add a UUID. So the theory there, and we've probably gone back and forth. You'll see some discussion about this on the mailing list and stuff from a few years ago, right? So the idea of using UUIDs is basically to identify resources that we're sending out to the end user. But with databases and the way they're evolving today, you're fine using an auto increment ID, and most databases will probably add an auto increment ID should you not have one dedicated as a primary key, for instance, for our model schema perspective. So you're fine. I guess that's kind of why I didn't insist even on the code review saying this thing, because apparently they have been optimized to do that, and especially for many to many relationships, which you're hiding from the end user anyway. It doesn't make a difference. It probably is going to add a performance impact on a lookup if you used UUIDs.
Okay, nice.
Yep.
I just want to show you why I select to use as integer.
Yeah.
But okay.
And apparently soft delete works, but that's the part I wanted you to check and let me know from the previous review. I left that comment. Okay, cool.
I check actually. It just use a different soft delete if you have ID as a as a string. So there is a condition in the code that we import
from
it's
SQL
not
Alchemy.
Manila code, and
yep.
I went to the code in the I think it's Oslo code.
Yeah, yeah, they have a soft delete integer class. Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome.
So moving, we have here the same thing. We need a ID a unique ID to synchronize this call, this here, and we use a shared network subnet ID here, and now I'm using from the first one. Nice.
That actually is going to depend on how that comes back from the database, right?
Yeah, it's if it's not sorted.
Right.
So maybe we should sort this, right? So we make sure that always we are getting the first in the order. So if another call try to do this call, it will sort this and you get the same subnet ID.
Yeah, and this
That's your point?
shared network subnet. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I don't remember if there was a. I mean, if this happens to be a file lock or even a twos lock. I think this one is a file lock. Synchronized from utils. It's not coordination synchronized.
It's external one. So
Okay.
it's
Yes, this one is file lock.
Okay. And is there a naming limit on file locks?
Don't know.
there's what? Sorry.
A naming limit.
Naming limit. Then okay.
Next
The length or
paragraph.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can discuss this over code review. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
I think the
Moving.
point about synchronization though here is that we don't, I mean, send too many requests to Neutron at the same time to allocate the ports, right?
I don't know why we are synchronizing this, to be honest.
Because is it reaching into
just
the,
follow.
yeah, makes sense. But is it reaching into the Neutron API or it's just trying to work with our database?
Yeah, because you could send many requests to allocate IPs on Neutron, and Neutron would like handle this, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to. I'm not sure then what is going on. I guess it's it could also be for the generic driver for all you know. And we probably moved that into the Yeah, I'm not sure either. Because we are talking to the driver, the shared backend driver, in one sense, asking for whether the share server that's allocated is compatible or not. Yeah, let's take this one to code review and figure it out.
We can discuss on code review. All right. So moving, changes to be a subnet now because it's more than one. It can be more than one. I don't know where else. Yeah, here. Yeah, here we want to retrieve the share servers from a subnet when we can get just the first subnet and retrieves all of them, because all subnets have the same set of share servers. So we don't need to get all of them and join. Just getting the share servers from one subnet in a given availability zone, we know all share servers in this availability zone. This is I added a note here just because there's this trick. Same create, create. Here we have this Manila do not support managed, so I can get the share server subnet from the first one, because the managed cannot be with more than one subnet. But the server will have several. It's a list, so I want to get the first one just because of the way that managed works. Okay, this one is an important one. Form setup info. This is used to collect the information that we send to the driver. This information contains the network information. There's a kind of mess here because we have a note saying following here. Let's see how it was before. Following network info fields are duplicated: segmentation ID, CIDR, network type, and they should be used from network allocation directly. They should be removed right after no one uses them. So we have like repeated information here, like segmentation ID, CIDR, neutral net, this two, segmentation ID, network type, all of them are part of network allocations. When we move to network allocations design, those information are replicated in network allocation. So we should remove. And here we have one problem. We keep the same, but now we create a network with multiple network info. But the problem is like security service will be repeated and backend details will be repeated. So here, now we have when you want to farm the setup info, we receive a shared network subnets. So it's no more a one single subnet, it's a list of subnets. And what we does here, we collect all allocations for first, we pass through the subnets, we collect the network allocation for each subnet. So we collect the allocations, passing the subnet ID, and then we append to the network info this information here repeated, just changing the network allocations. So network allocation comes from each iteration, right? But all other information will be repeated.
You don't need that, like in the sense that the note that Valerie had over there was basically the last time we did this. We initially just ever supported just one kind of network on every share server, right? And then we added two networks, a user network and an admin network. That's kind of why you see the network info populated with the other stuff, because we only used to have one network. But in case of multiple subnets, these are drivers that are going to implement this newly. So they're not going to be looking for this kind of information.
I think this part would be for the setup server, right? So
yeah, for the setup server.
I think the idea here was to keep the network info in the same the same condition, like in the same format. So for the drivers part, for example, we made the changes in the OnTap driver, but the Dell's driver, for example, they also have they also consume the network info, and the easiest approach would be to just provide a list of network info instead of trying to reformat the setup, the entire setup. So yeah, this was kind of something we did, I can't say it's like a hackery, but the idea here is to keep it as simple as possible. So we wouldn't at the time we started working on this, we were kind of a bit worried about the impacting drivers, and so the idea in keep the setup the server design as possible, as close as possible of the original was a concern at the time. So yeah. But yeah, so basically here we changed just one line, and Dell and the Dell driver will continue to work as expectedly, because as before, because basically they will continue they will get the network info with all the security services and everything from the dictionary. So if we change that, then we would need to go through the driver, look at the information, or maybe recreate the dictionary in the old form here. So it would be a bit more complicated. So yeah, just trying to a point why we decide doing that. Not sure if what the best call, but the idea was to try to minimize the impacting drivers.
No, makes sense. No, thanks. Yeah, I guess we'd have to be worried about what that comment looks like on the share manager, but kind of makes sense. I mean, it's not a big deal either. It's not that you're sending the wrong information. It's just that it's redundant information.
Yeah, this network info, there's already a legacy here.
Yeah.
So we need to actually refactor this one day, and we prefer to keep this as, if it's already a legacy, we want to keep this as a legacy, and in the future, someone that would like get this fight will also fix this repeated segmentation ID and also fix this list as repeated element. So as Fernando said, we don't want to break other drivers that use network info. So we want to make it as simple as possible. And the simple as possible is doing this like network info, get the first element and just keep going as before. So we don't need to understand the others vendor implementation for this setup driver. So we keep this as before, passing network info, but as a list.
Yeah. And nobody's gonna look at these comments, right? We have to probably make this this thing, I guess, probably make it a custom dictionary and start emitting warnings, I guess. Although it's going to be irritating to the administrators that are probably running a cloud and they can't do anything about that code. Maybe all they can do is just file a bug against that driver that's still using a deprecated key. But that's kind of the problem here, that we probably never communicated to the drivers that those keys were deprecated and put somewhere else, kinds. But you get the point, right? Like you could make a custom dictionary and start emitting warnings for the future if you want that to change. Otherwise, we just live with it and say, hey, we're always going to send this redundant info.
Yeah.
Okay.
But good, thanks for addressing that.
Okay, we can bring this discussion to the review as well.
Yeah.
We can decide together if we want to like keep it this way or using, like you said, a log and something. And we need more opinions. We need to think a bit more about this. But this is an important part of this code. Okay, moving, we have like this. It's a new function. It's just like removing this part of this code here. I passed to a new function called random setup server, just because I want to use this handling here, the handling the error here, the same with the update. So when you're setuping a server, if the setup fails, the driver can raise an exception, sending back like the tail data. And this tail data is the user can like printing something, it can save something on the backend details, so the administrator can see what happened to the setup server. We have this on the setup server, and I want to have the same thinking happening with the update. So when you update allocation, if it failed, it will call this handle setup server, and we'll do the same. If you return the tail data in the error message, it will be saved to the backend details. It was just because of this. I want to reuse this this flow. Okay, and going to the setup server. Now what a setup server does, it gets the subnets. It's a list of subnets. If check that there is at least one subnet, just to be safe here, it should never reach this code. Just to be safe that there is at least one subnet. And then it gets the share network ID from the first, because all subnets point to the same network. So we get from the first one, and do the same as before. Get the share network from the database, And now instead of allocate one, it's on the setup server. Instead of allocate one network from one subnet, it will do this for all subnets. So it will iterate over the subnets, allocate network, call the allocate network for each one, and keeping allocate one for the admin. So we didn't touch in the admin allocation, the same as before, because it doesn't depend on the subnet, on the shared network subnet. So it just this. What else? Then we get this same as before. We get the subnets. We refresh, because when you call the allocate network in the network plugin, it will fill this shared network subnet with the data from the allocation. So we need to refresh. So we do the same here that we did before. And then we collect the farm setup info. As we said, it's a list now. So I just mention here a list to make sure. And there's a validate segmentation ID. And it use this segmentation ID here. So I just, to keep this, I don't want to touch in this code. I just pass the first one that will contain the segmentation ID. Actually, we could change this, but I didn't. What else? Then we call the setup server, passing the list.
In theory, you could have different segmentation IDs for different subnets, correct?
That's
Yes,
true.
you could. I don't really know.
And I'm not sure
just
why
checked.
we are validating segmentation ID in case this is a neutron network, for instance. Is it even, are we doing a check for that?
Let's see what does network type in flat and network segmentation ID.
That's not fun. That could be anybody's network.
Network VLAN. Network segmentation is none.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could iterate over all subnets. That's your point.
We must, and we should probably not do this in case the network is a neutron network, right? So, and the reason I say that is because we have a provider in that case that's doing this work for you. We don't need to repeat that. So I'm probably asking you for like an enhancement to the code there. Skip the check if it's neutron. This validation has occurred somewhere else.
Nice. We can do this.
Yeah.
With the catch. Okay, thank you. So I will fix this later. So then setup server, network info list, and metadata. Okay, and handle setup server as it's just like it's a function right now. Okay, setup ID. We have the same. We have this in a lot of parts of the code. We want to synchronize something. We use the subnet ID, so we can discuss on the review later. Because I'm always getting the first one, right? You're right. It's because this. Okay, this is some fix. No, because now as IDs, because not only one ID. Here I changed. It's just something that we have in the share server migration. We need to know if the net has changed. So it means that they don't match in the neutral net ID, neutral subnet ID, but now it's a set. So I need a function to check that this set match with this set. So I create a new function for this. And we'll do this check. Here, same. If change it, we need to allocate, but now it's not only one single subnet, it's a list of subnets. So I allocate one, I do an allocation for each subnet. And case related to the share server migration. The same relate to the share server migration. I will speed up a little bit because we are running on time. Okay, and now the actual update. So I start from the lowest part. So here we call the update share server. I won't pass again from the check because we already saw this. Okay, so I pass from the update share server network allocation. So it will be triggered for each backend. And what we does here, we collect the share network. We get this added subnet from the database, the current subnets, and we filter the current subnets because when we get this, we get here all subnets in this availability zone. This will come with the newest one, which doesn't have been set yet. So we just filter to get only the ones that already have been set. And okay, and then we pass through all share servers. So we need to update the allocations for all share servers in this AZ. We get the share server ID, and here we change a bit the way that we pass this to the driver, because as we saw, the network info is a bit mess. There's some like legacy code, so I could like create this as a network, print network info and new network info and pass this down to the driver. But we prefer to change the way we pass network info to the driver to avoid repeated failures and to have a better network info. So we didn't reuse the network info, that code, that farm setup info. So I get the farm network allocations for the current, and what it does is the farm here, it received the net server ID in subnets, and it collected allocations for each subnet, and it sent back the admin allocations and subnet allocations. Right, so we have the allocation for the admin and the subnets for each subnet as a list. So this is a list, and when you do this, we get here the current here date, current network allocation. Then we collect the share instance, the snapshot instance for this share server, and we do the update. So this code, we do the actual update. It's just collecting data, and the do update, we will allocate the network for this new subnet in this new driver, in this driver. So it will allocate IPs for this share server, and get subnet allocation to get the new allocations using not as I said, not the network info, using a new way of passing this to the driver. Validate segmentation ID, and here we need to do the same here. We are just check from the first allocation, but here is just one subnet. I think we can keep it as this, because this is just one. The new subnet is being validated. I think we can keep this as only one. We don't need to iterate. And then we send just to the driver. Update share server network allocations. So we send the share server, the current network allocations, the new network allocations, the security service. Now the security service is not a part of the network info to avoid repeated data. It's a specific parameter. And share instance is snapshot instance. And the driver will do this update, returns a model. This model update can contain server details that will be updated, can have share updates with the updates of export locations. So it's a dictionary on each key is ID of the share, and the value is the export locations to be updated. So we call share export locations update, updating the export locations for this new subnet. And same for the snapshot. We need to update the export locations if the driver returns this update, and we update on the driver. And
I see that you're doing a model update for snapshots, but not for shares. you should probably do the same for shares as well, because I can imagine somebody trying to update status in case some of the shares didn't get re-exported on the new subnet, for instance.
Okay. We can do this.
Right. Yeah.
We can do the same as we did with the snapshot, right? You mean we get this?
Pretty much get the model
yeah,
update, and if there is anything else, they should be allowed to do that.
Okay. And yeah, so we pass through all share server, calling this do update, which will allocate the resource from the network and call the driver. And if some errors, if like it triggers, like it raises an error, we do like we log, we call handle setup server, which do the same of the setup server, have the ability to save something in the share server model if the driver returns a error contain data details, something like that, data details. If the error contains this key, we will update the backend details for the share server. And finally, we update the resource status to error and continue to the next server. So it means that when an error, when setting a server fails, it won't break the entire update. It will try to update other servers. In the end, we will have like some servers in the error state, others in active state, and it's up to the administrator to go to the storage and make sure that it match with their allocations and set back the status of the share server to active. So, and finally, what we does here, we just check share server network update finish, because this function is from, actually, it's from the secret service. It's the same function. It's basically check that all resources in this share network, all resources are either in network, are either in error state or active state. So share update finished. It will check if all status on share service is different from network change. It means it's an error state or inactive state, but it's no more in the server network change state. And if it's true, it will update the share network to active back. And I think that's all. I don't want to spend much time. Do you have any question related to the manager or something in the core part? Okay. Nice. I think we have in the drivers, we just, as we show, we just change the drivers that set up servers to consume the first element of the network info. And I think that's all. We have some changes in the neutron. I don't know if you want to pass through those changes. If we have still, if we are running out of time, we still have to pass through the NetApp and the container driver. What do you think, guys? Do you want to pass through the? We change a bit the neutron network plugin, a standalone network plugin. Any opinion?
No, looks kind of straightforward. You covered those methods when looking at the share manager.
Okay. We can review this offline.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you. I think we can move to the drivers part.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Felipe.
You're welcome. I will stop sharing my screen.
Yep.
You
I
can
will share
go.
mine in just a sec. Here. Okay, so let's share screen. Yeah. So I will start showing the code for the NetApp driver. I will try to make it fast. Maybe if we can go through it in like 15 minutes, Eduardo will have also 15 minutes to present his. Just a sec, let me. Okay. Okay, so here we have the patch for implementing the multiple subnet support for the NetApp driver as well. So let's start with the beginning. So for the driver multiple multi SVM. Sorry.
And a suggestion. I was
Go
wondering
ahead.
if we should break the recording now so we can have like two separate videos when we upload it.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
So
a
just
sec.
like breaking one and then starting a fresh one so we can have two separate videos for both sessions.
Okay, let me do that. Okay, folks, so closing this call, I think we covered the Manila core part, and that's it. Thank you very much for attending.